So what's going on tonight that we're protesting?
Well, we are protesting shipment number 17 of tar sands megaloads, as they're called, because they're so humongous. Most of them, even the smaller ones, are usually 24 feet wide, and so they block 2 lanes.
So what are the stakes here? Because I think a lot of people are still confused about what exactly tar sands oil means.
These parts that are coming through Moscow are actually parts of an upgrader plant. These upgrader plants put a ton accidentally of this this oil mixture, which is called bitumen, into the air, just accidentally. And so essentially with the snow melting down every spring, you end up with, in effect, an oil spill every single year. And this is any kind of oil spill in whatever form is toxic to all kinds of life. You also have around these processing plants all kind of settling ponds, waste pools, if you will. Now, essentially we're sacrificing one of the great stores of water left in the world, and we are polluting that water to the point where it's unusable by anything. Tens of thousands of waterfowl and birds have died landing in these settling ponds, and you can see them from space. One is like 50 square miles. That's how big it is. And the only thing keeping these settling ponds from polluting the Athabasca River that runs through this whole complex are dirt dams, essentially, and they leak. They're made out of dirt, and in many cases, because they have to keep building up these dirt levees around them, they're very much higher than the river, all around the river. So that stuff's going into the river. The people most affected are just a small community of native people that live where the Athabasca River dumps into Lake Athabasca, and they depend on fish from the river and the lake. There's been fish churning up with tumors. There's also one of the last vestiges anywhere in North America of woodland caribou up in that area. They're suffering as well. These native people who rely on a subsistence lifestyle are being poisoned by even eating the wild game and fish. It's an ongoing situation of genocide, just like what has happened all across North America. The tar sands, or as they call them in Canada, are an extremely subsurface grade of petroleum. So essentially they have to strip mine vast areas, and so there's a lot of stored carbon just in the surface organic material and beneath the surface, and so that is being released in the mining process. Another problem is that these soils are covered by one of the greater tracts of intact forests in the world. Those forests are being stripped away at the second fastest rate of anywhere in the whole entire world. There again is another carbon source. And forests tend to mediate, absorb carbon and keep that out of circulation in the atmosphere, so you're losing that cleansing effect. And not only that, but this processing that these parts going through Moscow accommodate, it also uses a lot of energy. In fact, I've heard it said that it uses, and I think this figure is in the course of a year, it uses the same amount of natural gas that would be used in Canada by 4 million homes. The oceans are already starting to rise. There's whole entire countries in the Pacific, like the Maldives, that are losing their island that they live on, and trying to figure out if they can build up higher on top of that island, or if they need to sell their island or move to another, start another country. And there are native people up on the northwestern coast of Alaska who are actually, I haven't followed up on this for a few years, but they were suing the oil companies for causing climate change, just causing the oceans to rise. And then of course, the oceans pound at their shoreline villages up there as well. There's also increased intensity and frequency of severe weather occurrences. This is everything from tsunamis to hurricanes to tornadoes, hailstorms, any kind of extreme weather you can imagine. There has been a documented increase in those situations. And of course, since it's not necessarily global warming, but just changes in both the temperature and precipitation regimes all over the globe, but in different ways, then there's impacts to the forests, what kind of trees can grow in certain places, and of course, all the understory plants and animals that rely on those forests. There's also agriculture implications. 60 to 80% of agriculture on the entire globe is going to be impacted by shifting, again, temperature and precipitation. One situation that a lot of people haven't heard about is the Himalayas have many, many glaciers. I mean, there's a greater concentration in those mountain ranges than just about anywhere else in the world. Those glaciers are melting rapidly, and some of those glaciers actually dam lakes. If one gives way suddenly, people could be flooded quite easily downstream in places like Nepal and Tibet. But the thing is with those river systems is they come off the Himalaya, but they water an entire, the subcontinent of India, Southeastern Asia, that whole area. There are millions of people that rely on these water systems just for the basics of water and life itself. They water their crops with it. And that is vanishing rapidly. It could be, those folks could face severe depletions of just water over the next 50, 100 years. And that would bring a lot of strife, of course. Anything that you could imagine that is based on the air that we breathe and its temperature and precipitation and all the things that affects, that's what's going to be affected by climate change. And so we're actually really honored here in Moscow to point out everything that's wrong with this project, because it really does represent just what's so wrong with our culture and how we engage the world so industrially and how much damage that does.